What is up guys, Flashfire here, and today we are going to be building a team with Toxtricity. This guy is one of my favorite looking Pokemon from the new generation, so I'm super excited to start using him in competitive formats. If you guys are excited too, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and check the link in the description to go and follow me on Twitch so you can catch games with this team on Showdown and in Wi-Fi battles live as they happen. So jumping straight into this, we're going to get started with Toxtricity. This is, as I said, one of my favorite looking mons from the new generation. He's got some really interesting moves, really interesting ability, and I think just generally he's going to be a really big threat. So this guy is both electric and poison type. Obviously this means these are going to be his most dangerous offensive typings, so he will struggle severely against things that are both steel and ground type. So this is something to take into account when building the rest of the team. The first thing we've got to do when we're deciding on what role this guy's going to fill is take a look at his stats. So we see here he has a 114 special attack stat and a 75 speed stat. Now this speed stat is a little bit underwhelming, as is the special attack stat. If we're being honest, I would rather not run him with a scarf just because I want to have a little bit of extra power. 114 isn't bad, but it's not incredible either. As such, we're going to be running him with a choice specs, and this is going to allow him to hit as hard as possible and basically just be a special wall breaker that's able to take massive chunks out of everything that it doesn't resist or have an immunity to his offensive typings. So we're going to be running him with a choice specs here. Now, one of the most interesting parts of this guy is his new ability called Punk Rock. Basically what this does is it increases the power of sound-based moves by 1.5, which means that we can run a bunch of sound-based moves on this guy and have loads of extra damage output. The most obvious move here, of course, being Boom Burst. This thing has 140 base power. When you add the Punk Rock ability, it's basically adding a stab boost to it on its own, so this turns into 210 base power, as well as having the choice specs and the 114 special attack stat to start with. That thing is going to be hitting like a truck, and it's especially helpful here as there are a lot of Pokemon running about at the moment that are immune to his poison and electric coverage, so having the Boom Burst there as a nice neutral middle ground is really, really good. Of course, ghost types are going to be immune to this as well, so all of his offensive typings you can have an immunity to. It's going to be very important that you predict correctly when using this guy, and I think that's probably what's going to hold him back the most. All three of his offensive typings have very common immunities, and that makes him slightly dangerous to use, especially as he's a little bit on the slow side. So we're going to be running Boom Burst, and then in the second slot we are going to be running Overdrive. This gives us an electric type stab move. Overdrive is a sound-based electric type move with 80 base power, which obviously is lower than Thunderbolt's 90 base power, but when you add the Punk Rock boost, it boosts it to a 120 base power move, so it's basically Thunder, but 100% accurate, which you can't really argue with. Then for the Poison Stab move, we're just going to be running Sludge Wave. This is the highest power special poison move that this guy has access to. And then finally, we're going to be running Volt Switch here. I really like Volt Switch and U-Turn. If you guys have seen any of my previous videos, you'll know that I'm a big fan of gaining momentum with all of these moves. So Volt Switch, U-Turn, I like to slap them on wherever I can. As well as that, there isn't really anything that this guy would want to take instead of Volt Switch. He only really has access to these three types worth of coverage on the special side, so you're not missing out on an extra coverage slot. Something that's important to mention here as well is that if you Dynamax this guy, he does of course gain the ability to use any of the moves listed here because he won't be locked in by his choice specs anymore, and I believe the poison type Dynamax move gives you a +1 to your special attack when you use it, so that could potentially cause some big issues for your opponents. Now, we've mentioned it a couple of times already, but it is possible to be completely immune to every single one of Toxtricity's moves. As well as that, something that it really struggles with is a big specially defensive wall. So while things like Snorlax and Ferrothorn might not be able to have immunity to its entire set of coverage, they will be able to eat up hits all day long and just kind of give this guy real trouble. We're going to need to be able to deal with things like that in order for Toxtricity to shine on this team. Something else to mention as well before we move on from this, as this guy is going to be using sound-based moves all the time, it means that opponents' substitutes do not mean anything. So if your opponent's trying to set up substitutes on you, sound-based moves, for those of you who don't know, completely ignore substitutes. So Boom Burst and Overdrive will completely ignore a substitute and hit your opponent directly, which is really cool. So before we move on from this guy, we are just going to take a look at the EV spread real quick. As I said, his speed tier is a little bit underwhelming, so what we're going to be doing is putting full investment into special attack and speed, and then just running a timid nature so that he can outspeed as many things as possible, potentially speed tie with other base 75s and all of that good stuff. So as I said, a lot of the things that this guy struggles with will be ghost types, ground types, steel types, and your specially defensive mons. Something that deals quite well with a lot of those things is Gyarados. This guy is a really, really dangerous Dynamax user at the moment, and I think he's really strong on almost any team, really. I'm not sure that I've used this guy on the channel yet, but this set, I believe, is incredibly strong, and if you're looking for a potent setup sweeper, then I think you should look no further than Gyarados here. We're going to be running a leftovers on this guy so that we can potentially get that little bit of extra longevity against Stealth Rocks and tank a couple of extra hits while we're going for Dragon Dances. Then the ability we're going to be running here, we're going to be going for the hidden ability Moxie, which means that every time this KOs a Pokemon, he gets +1 attack. So basically the idea would be you switch him in and then pick something off to get a kill and you get the +1, or you get the Dragon Dance off and then one hit something and you get +2, +1, and it's really, really strong. The ideal situation would be if you could switch this guy in Dynamax and then get a kill with Gmax Airstream, because then obviously you get +1 attack from the kill and +1 attack, +1 speed from using Airstream, which really, really strong. The moveset we're going to be running here, we've gone for Waterfall, Power Whip, and Bounce for our attacking moves. You could absolutely run Earthquake on here. I don't think it's especially necessary. All that will hit is things like Rock types, Steel types, and Fire types, but with the rest of your coverage here, you have Waterfall, you have Power Whip, and between the two of those, you are going to be able to hit at least neutral coverage against those things, if not super effective, and hopefully by the time you're in against those kind of things, you have a couple of attack boosts anyway, so hopefully the lack of Earthquake doesn't make a huge difference. And of course, having Power Whip on here allows you to absolutely blast through things that would otherwise check you quite heavily, an example here being Rotom Wash. Bounce, of course, is a little bit underwhelming if you use it out with being Dynamax, but this gives us access to the Flying type Dynamax move, Gmax Airstream, which, as I've said, is a physical 130 base power move, and it gives +1 speed when you use it. So if you can pick up a KO with that, you get +1 attack and +1 speed, which just absolutely skyrockets this guy in threat potential. You can essentially get a free Dragon Dance off while killing something, which is balanced. Then in the final move slot here, we're going for Dragon Dance. Of course, you would ideally switch this guy in, get a Dragon Dance off, and then Dynamax and start going a little bit mental with all your Dynamax moves. That would be kind of the plan. And then finally, the EV spread. I think most of you have probably guessed what this is going to be by now, but we are literally just going to be running attack, speed, and a jolly nature. We want to be able to outspeed as many things as possible, and we want to be able to hit as hard as possible. So there we go. Now, the next one we're going to be going for here is actually going to be bringing us a lovely bit of fire coverage to deal with Ferrothorn, and a lot of other threat potential with its very high special attack stats. So it's going to be a Hydreigon. Bringing this guy in as a Scarfer, you guys will see I really like Hydreigon as a Scarfer. He's got some really good coverage and very spammable moves in Dark Pulse and Fire Blast. So we're going to be running this guy as a Choice Scarf user. We've got the Levitate on there as well, which means that it adds an extra ground type immunity, giving us 2 now for the team. And as I said, this guy can just churn out a lot of damage very quickly. He makes for a very, very strong revenge killer. The moveset we're going to be going for here is Draco Meteor, just to nuke things down once we've removed all the fairies from the enemy team. Then we're running Dark Pulse for a very nice spammable stab coverage move. It has good super effective damage against a lot of the meta, as well as good neutral coverage. Then we're going to go for Fire Blast. Obviously, this is going to get us through things like Ferrothorn and Corviknight really nicely. And finally, U-Turn, as we've mentioned already. U-Turn and Volt Switch are absolutely awesome tools for getting free switches and just gaining momentum in general, which I really, really like. And finally, we'll just go over the EV spread here. This is something that's a little bit custom, and I feel like there's probably definitely benefit to just going for a pretty standard EV spread. What I've gone for here is 24 HP EVs. That's because the speed EVs that I've got here are only so that we outspeed Darmanitan. So Darmanitan hits 317 speed at max, and most of them are running Scarfs at the moment, so you want to be able to hit well, ideally it'd be 318, but you skip that and you just go to 319. So we're running 232 speed EVs, so that we guarantee we outspeed Darmanitan, and then it means that we can add just that little bit of extra HP investment. It gives us 6 extra HP. You never know. It might make a difference. Now, at this point in time, I don't think any team would be complete without its very own Dragapult check. That thing is absolutely running wild on the ladder at the moment. I think it's really, really strong, and I think we're going to see a lot of it on a lot of teams. So I have been using Clefable recently, but what I've also found to be really effective in this slot is a Sylveon. So we're going to be running a Sylveon here with the leftovers. Much in the same way as Clefable, if you run this guy especially defensive, he cannot get 2 hit by anything Dragapult does. and he can fire back with an outrageous amount of damage output, which is really nice. It also means that we have 2 Pokemon on this team with sound-based moves, so opponents are not going to be setting up substitutes anywhere near us, which is really nice. So the ability here is a bit of a no-brainer. We're going for Pixelate. For those of you who don't know, this makes normal type moves Fairy type instead and gives them a power boost 1.2 times. So Hyper Voice becomes a Fairy type move, and it has essentially an extra 18 base power or something, goes to like 110-ish base power, and it becomes Fairy type, so you get the stat boost on top of that. Really, really strong. So for the moves, we're going to be running Hyper Voice, Wish, and Protect as our kind of main staple moves here, and then I would honestly love to run something like Aromatherapy or Heal Bell, but I believe Sylveon no longer has access to those moves, unfortunately. So instead, we're going to be going for Mystical Fire here. This gives us a 4 times effective move against Ferrothorn, which can otherwise switch into this pretty much whenever it wants and just be a nuisance. And also has the chance to drop special attack of opponents by 1. So if you know that your opponent's going to switch in something that resists your Hyper Voice, you can potentially drop the special attack of whatever comes in, which might make a difference. And as I've said already, this guy is here to check and counter special dragon types. So things like Dragapult and Hydreigon and all of that good stuff. So we are going to be running a specially defensive EV spread with max HP investment and max special defense investment. Another bonus of having this guy on the team is that we can pass wishes to other members of our team that don't have reliable recovery. If we've gone in with Hydreigon a little bit too hard or tanked a hit by accident, we can potentially heal him up with a wish. It also means that if we're not sure what our opponent's going to switch to or what our opponent's going to use, we can get a wish off with Sylveon and switch into something and probably tank it and get back to a relatively healthy place. Now, this next Pokemon that we're going to be using is something that I'm very excited about. I always find it really interesting when not fully evolved Pokemon make it into the regular meta game. So this is of course going to be Galarian Corsola. This thing is honestly a beast. If you look at its defensive stats, even without the Eviolite in use, it has base 60 HP, base 100 defense, and 100 special defense. If you couple these things with an Eviolite, which for those who don't know, basically gives +1 defense and special defense to Pokemon that have an evolution left. So because Corsola hasn't evolved yet, it holds the Eviolite and it basically gets +1 boost to its defense and special defense stats, which just make it really, really tanky. On top of that, it has access to a really cool utility move pool and a very interesting ability. So the ability we're going to be running here is called Cursed Body, which reads, if this Pokemon is hit by an attack, there's a 30% chance that that move gets disabled. So the good thing about this Pokemon especially is that it's very, very tanky, so if your opponent doesn't have super effective coverage on it, it's going to be very difficult to take it out. The really good thing about Cursed Body is opponents will often only have 1 super effective move to hit it with. So if on that first hit you can tank it and then by chance disable it, it puts your opponent in a very awkward situation, and it means that you can basically do whatever you want to them, which is very exciting. So in terms of a moveset here, like I say, he has some very interesting utility moves as well. We don't have anything on the team with Hazard yet, so we are going to be running Stealth Rock on this guy. As well as that, we've got the Will-O-Wisp on here, which is going to be fantastic for burning physical attackers, and just generally on switches, it's a really good move to go for. Then I believe this is, or maybe it's not unique to Galarian Corsola, but it's the only Pokemon that I've seen use it effectively, and the next move is going to be Strength Sap, which reads, user heals HP equal to the target's attack stat, lowers attack by 1. So it's essentially a move that intimidates your opponent and then heals you for the amount of HP, for an amount of HP equal to your opponent's attack stat. So if you use this, basically this guy, we're going to be running a physically defensive spread as well, so this is our kind of tank for physical hits. If you switch this guy into a physical attacker, you can give them -1 attack and then heal basically to full every single time. This thing can take hits all day long. It's so cool. And then in the final move slot here, we've just got Hex, basically just for a little bit of damage where we need it. As well as that, it will often get the power boost because we'll be Will-O-Wisping the things that we're in against. Not going to be getting an outrageous amount of damage off of that base 65 special attack, but you never know, that every bit of chip damage helps. So this is, of course, going to be our answer to things like Darmanitan and other dangerous physical attackers. So in the final slot here, we are currently missing something to remove hazards, and I believe the strongest rapid spinner in the tier at the moment is going to be Excadrill. I really just think this guy is way too good to pass up, especially given that he kind of fits our team in terms of typing. We are in need of a steel type and a ground type, so this guy just fits the bill really nicely. As we already have rocks on the Corsola, we're actually going to be going for a slightly more offensive moveset on this guy as well. So I've got the leftovers on here, and Mold Breaker. I often like to tech the Sand Rush just so that we can hit opposing Sand Rush Excadrills with a speed tie, but I feel like going for Mold Breaker definitely gives a more consistent experience, and it allows us to EQ things like Rotom and just have a really good time in general. So as I said, we're not going to be running the Stealth Rocks on here, and as such, I'm going to slap Swords Dance on here. The really cool thing about this guy is, If you get a Rapid Spin off now, obviously it's been buffed to where Rapid Spin gives +1 speed. So if you can get a Rapid Spin off and then tank another hit and use a Swords Dance, it puts you at +2/+1, and that's potential to just that's basically Sand Excadrill, but without the sand. He can set up for himself. It's really good. And then obviously we still have the coverage from Iron Head and Earthquake, so I really think this guy can be a big threat, as well as being able to remove hazards. And then finally, just for the EV spread, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We're maxing out attack and speed, and we're going for a Jolly Nature, just so that we can speed type with other Excadrills, and outspeed as much as possible with our +1. So that's going to be the team, guys. If you like it, please do let me know down in the comments. Let me know what you think I should change, how I can make it better as well. I'm always looking for advice, and I do respond to pretty much every comment on every video, so if you've got any questions at all about this team or anything else, let me know down below. Remember to subscribe for more team builders and battling content, and I will see you in the next one.